The table? Okay. How do I fill in my table? Okay, so we've got 0, 1, negative 1, 2, what else? I can't. Negative 2, 4, what else? Negative 3, 8. Perfect. Did everybody get that for their table? Fill in their points? Okay, who can give me the parent function for an exponential equation? It's not y equals mx plus b. What is this one? Not quite. I heard part of it. A, b, to the x. I don't know what's going on with the word. A, b to the x. Awesome. Now, who can tell me what the pattern is? What are they multiplying by for the y? This one's a little tricky. What are they multiplying by? By 1/2. Awesome. So we're multiplying by 1/2. So would that be my A or my B? My B. Okay, we're sort of missing one other thing. What are we missing? The A. What is my A? 1. How did you know it was 1? Yeah, we have this point right here. It's where we start, our starting value. So 0, 1. A y, can't I remember the y-intercept? But if it were multiple choice, remember that a 1 multiplied by anything is just itself. So usually if it were a multiple choice option, it would just look like y equals 1/2 to the x. Are we good with that? Leslie? Yep, awesome. Okay, so what about the next one? What's the A for this one? 0.75. How'd you know that? The y-intercept, perfect, right here, where x is 0. Okay? What about B? No. This one has a mistake in this table. I know. This is the one that had the mistake on that one. Do you see it? There's 1 point missing.
1/3.
It is multiplying by 1/3. So 12 divided by 3, or 12 times 1/3 would give you 4. 0.75 times 1/3 would give you 0.25. I was having a side conversation with Ms. K because 4 times 1/3 would not be 0.75, but that's okay. So our B is 1/3. So would that be growth or decay? Decay. Since this number is less than 1, it would be decay. So who can give me my equation?
Y equals 0.75 parentheses x.
And make sure you get in the habit. This handwriting can be a problem. I have really terrible handwriting. I'm sure y'all have picked up on that in comparison to this K. But when I was in school, that X has to be a small little x. Some people misread their handwriting and type in a normal x, and that would make it linear, not exponential. So make sure you're using raised to the x, caret x, whatever you're doing, but a small x, not a big x. Awesome. Make sure you circle how you feel on the side. Thumbs up, I had it, didn't need any help. Thumbs in the middle, I just needed help getting started. Or thumbs down, somebody help me, I don't know what's going on. Cool. So there were quite a few people absent yesterday. Make sure that I record every lesson. I put it on Google Classroom and I put it on YouTube. So make sure, even I saw Allison take pictures of the answer key just so she can get the notes. That's something I would suggest you guys do. That's why I keep the binder up here so that you guys can take, if you need the notes, you can take pictures of it and then ask any questions. And so it's always in that pink, whatever folder you missed, it's always in that day. Because remember, we're doing 2 lessons a day. So we should be almost done first semester. If you weren't here yesterday also, today we're doing this unit, we're doing exponential. You have not done that first semester last semester. You didn't do exponential functions. So this would be new if you haven't done algebra before. Okay, so the parent function that we talked about, so we're on our notes for today. So today what we're doing is we're doing writing exponential functions, but now we're dealing with percents. You probably will need a calculator, so if you don't have one, make sure you go get one. And the parent function that we went over is y equals ab dx. So we did that this morning. Y equals ab. A, B to the x. And so that's what it says in your formula sheet. It does not give you what A and B means. It just gives you that is the exponential equation. Yeah, so what does A represent? In general? Y what? Yeah, the Y value in your Y intercept. It's also your initial value. This should be a review from yesterday. Your B is your growth or decay factor. If you're writing this on your notes. And so today we're going to be breaking down B. So you should be writing this down. Today we're going to be breaking down the B. And so inside the B, so we're kind of breaking it down, it's either 1 plus R or 1 minus R. That's what's going on in this B. So before, when we're looking at tables and graphs, we just divided to figure out what was being multiplied. But now it may be changed by a percent. And so what this means, if it's just 1 plus your rate. Your rate is your percent to a decimal. If it's decay, which is right here, it's 1 minus your rate, which is your percent to a decimal. It will make more sense in a few minutes. So just make sure you write that down. Okay, does everyone have a calculator? If you don't find one, this is your calculator cheat sheet for percents. So to get a decimal into a percent, so take your calculator, you're going to practice this, but put it on the side. You're pressing second, that button. And then if you press the first parentheses button, it will say a percent. That turns a percent into or let me see, 25. If you do second, it will say like 25%. That turns a percent into a decimal. So right here, we're going to need to change a percent into a decimal. So if I'm changing 25% into a decimal, you press 25, then you press the button second and that parentheses. It looks like this. That changes, it will look something like this in your calculator if I were to do 25%. And 25% as a decimal is 0.25. So it's just kind of a little calculator cheat sheet. If you have a decimal that you want to change to a percent, you press second and the other parentheses. That will change if you put 0.25 and put that in, it will change it to 25%. So instead of remembering those rules, you can remember the little calculator cheat sheets. And it will make more sense when we do a few examples. But I want you to write that down. So I'm going to give you a few examples, and we're going to write the equation. So the first thing I'm going to give you is the initial value. So this first example has an initial value of 5. It's a growth example, and it's growing by 20%. So this is my first example. So you're writing that in. I have an initial value of 5. It's growing by 20%. What we're going to be doing is write the equation. So how I do that is I write y equals, what is my a? 5, right? My initial value of my line intercept's 5. Then I'm going to do parentheses. So now it's not just going to be b, right? We're going to have to figure out what b is. Since it's growing, would I add or subtract from 1? Add. So I know it's 1 plus your r. So if it says growth or like increasing, something like that, I know I'm adding to 1. 20%, some of you guys just know 20% as a decimal, which is 0.2 or 0.20. If you don't, you just put 20 second in that parentheses and it will change it to 0.2 or 0.20 for you. And then to the x. Does that make sense? So now we're dealing with percents. Percent increase, percent decrease. You probably won't see this as an answer choice. So the last thing you want to do is just simplify 1 plus 0.20. What is 1 plus 0.20? What's $1 plus 20 cents? $1.20, right? So like 1.2 or 1.20. So it looks something like that. It could look either or, but you want to make sure you understand, hey, it's bigger than 1, so I know it's growing. And I'm adding 20% to it, it's growing by 20%. So that's all we're doing for this first part, the equation. Does that make sense? Let's try another one. So the next example we're going to do is, it initially has 2. It's going to be decay this time. And it's going to be decaying by 5%. So now, how am I going to write this? What's my a going to be here? 2. Beautiful. So y equals 2. And then for my b, am I going to do 1 minus or 1 plus? 1 minus, because it's decay. So if it says decrease, decays, if it's going down in value, I know it's 1 minus. Now, what is 5% as a decimal? Good, 0.05. A lot of people will say 0.5. What is 0.5? 50%. So be careful. That's why you might want to double check by doing 5 and then just doing the first parentheses. So we're going to do 0.05. Yeah. Now, what is, if I have $1 and I take away 5 cents from you, how much am I left with? 95 cents, right? So my full equation will look like this, 0.95 to the x. A lot of people say, yeah, it's decaying by 95%. But we can see that since we took 5 cents away from that $1, it's actually decaying by 5%. It's also smaller than 1, because 0.95 is smaller than 1. I know it's decaying. So now I want you guys to try this one on your own. So the last one for now we're going to give you is, it starts with 3, is your initial value. It's decaying again by 22%. So see if you can try that on your own. When you got it, raise your hand because I am going to stamp this one. So see if you can try this one on your own. So it will look something like this. So the first example. All right, the first example is going to look like this. Y equals 3, 1.25 dx. So I set down. So we're on the bottom of the first page. Come on, I'm on the front page. So you're writing that equation at the bottom. Yeah, right there. And now we're trying to figure out what's going on in this equation. So what is the initial value here? 3, because that's my A, right? So I know my A is 3. Is it growing or decaying? Growing. Why? It's more than 1. So since it's more than 1, I know it's growing. So right here I would put growth. Now I need to figure out how much it's growing. All you have to do is figure out how much above $1 is this. How much above 1 is that number? 0.25, right? Like 25 cents. To get it into a percent, that's when you do the second, the other parentheses that looks like that. So I could put 0.25 in your calculator, second, and the other parentheses going the other way.
25%.
It will get you 25%. So it's growing by 25%. Does that make sense? Cool. Let's try another one. So the next one we're going to look at is this equation. So it's y equals 0.8 to the x. So now what's the initial value here? 2. Is it growing or decaying? Decaying. Why? Why would it be decaying and not growing? Because it's less than 1. To figure out how much it's decaying by, it's not decaying by 80%. I need to do 1 minus that number. Or figure out how far away is 0.8 or 0.80 from 1. Basically, if you had 80 cents and you wanted to buy a snack in the snack machine, you needed $1. How much more money do you need? You have 80 cents. You need 20 cents. So it would be decreasing by 20%. You could also always do 1 minus 0.8 and then turn it into a percent. So you would get 0.2 and then you could turn it into a percent. It's over if it's growing, you're doing that number minus 1. So like the first one, it would look like that. Cool. Let's try the next one. So the next one is y equals 6 times 0.05 to the x. So right here, what's your initial value? 6. Is it growing or decaying?
Okay.
Decay. By how much? Does anyone get it?
95%.
95%. So you would get 0.95 and then you just click these buttons in your calculator to turn it into a percent. So it would be decaying by 95%. There will be answer choices on your milestone that will say decaying by 5%. They are going to try to trick you. But you need to remember, hey, either how far away is that from 1? If I only have 5 cents, if Damon wants to buy a snack from the snack machine that's $1, how much more cents does he need? If he has 5 cents, he needs $1. 95 cents. You could either do it that way or just do, okay, what's 1 minus 0.05 and turn that into a percent. So like right here, you would get 0.95 and turning it into a percent would be 95. Does that make sense? Okay, so now you're going to do the bottom of that fact sheet. So when you look at the back, we already went over this. You already did this for Sam. So now you're doing this part. So you're looking at the equation. You're writing what's the initial value, is it growing or decaying, and by what percent. you get this unit will be pretty easy for you. The rest of the unit will be a piece of cake. So if you get this, you'll be good. Does anyone not get anything about it? No? Okay, so make sure you're practicing that. So you have around 10 minutes to finish this up. Your ticket out the door looks like this. So it's saying it gives you the initial amount, and what it increases by, they want the equation. This one's giving you the equation, and they want the initial amount. Is it growing or decaying, and by what %? So that's going to be your ticket out the door. So each thing we learn. Any questions on either of those?